Well, welcome to Advent video number 9. We just have one more video after this at the look at the use of the Old Testament and Zechariah song in Luke chapter 1. So as I mentioned in the last video, what Zechariah has done at the beginning, he praises God. Then he turns to look at his son, John the Baptist's role in the coming of the Messiah. And then he turns his attention towards the Messiah and what his role will be in this coming day of salvation that God is bringing. And so I want us to look at just the next verse in Zechariah's song. So I'm going to pull that up and read it, and I'm going to read a little bit back just so we get some context here, of course. And so Zechariah says this, "And you, child, will be called the prophet of the Most High, for you will go before the Lord to prepare his ways, to give knowledge of salvation to his people in the forgiveness of sins, because of the tender mercy of our God, whereby the sunrise shall visit us from on high, to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace." And so to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death is a common passage that we read at Advent. It's from Isaiah 9, and I'm going to read it. We'll read the entirety of it and then talk a little bit more about it. So Isaiah 9 says this. Sorry, it's a little small. Tried to fit all of it in there. "But there will be no gloom for her who is in anguish. In the former time, he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the latter time, he has made glorious the way of the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. For you have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as they are glad when they divide the spoil. For the yoke of his burden and the staff for his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. For every boot of the trampling warrior in battle tumults, and every garment rolled in blood, will be burned as fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this." So many of you have heard Isaiah 9 read during Advent. It's a common passage, especially the last part about the coming child that is born. We're particularly familiar, I think, also with the beginning where it says, "The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shone." So we can look back and see the connection with Luke chapter 1, to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death. So Isaiah 9:6 is one of the most well-known Advent passages among Christians. It's the prediction of the child born to rule, and Zechariah's quotation about those sitting in darkness refers back to Isaiah 9:2. But the question is, why does Isaiah speak of this child, and how does the child connect with this darkness that Isaiah mentions in 9:2? What is the connection between the darkness and then the child that is born? Well, understanding the larger context of Isaiah chapters 7, 8, and 9 is key to help us better appreciate the coming of this child. So in Isaiah chapter 7, the kingdom of Judah, which, as we hopefully remember, is home to the kings who are from David's line. I show a map here that I pulled off the internet, so I tried to give it proper attribution. So this is the Middle East, or the ancient Near East, as we call it, during Isaiah's time. This is the time period of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. So you can see the Assyrian Empire here goes all over what we now call the Middle East, Israel down on into Egypt. And then just to help us see, so that's the Neo-Assyrian Empire. We're going to talk about Assyria in just a second. And then here is a map of Israel and her neighbors. So we remember that the kingdom divided after Solomon. So you have the 10 northern tribes of Israel, and then you have the two southern tribes, which are called Judah. And we see that those kingdoms are ruled by the kingdom of Judah is ruled by descendants of David. And the kingdom of Judah in Isaiah 7 is under military threat. So Assyria has begun its conquest of the eastern Mediterranean world, and it started moving south to conquer Judah's neighbors to the north. So you can see if they go directly across from Assyria to Israel, there's desert. So they can't do that. They need water for troops and for animals. So they actually go up north and then over south, as you can kind of see. So when Assyria begins conquering, they actually begin conquering the northern places of both Judah and Israel. And so that's what's happened during this time is Assyria, during Isaiah chapter 7, that is, Assyria has moved to conquer more areas around it. And it's started north and then it's coming down south against Judah. And what's happening in Isaiah 7 is the other nations around Judah offer an alliance to Judah's king. His name is Ahaz. And they offer this alliance to fight against Assyria. So particularly in Isaiah 7, it's the kingdom of Israel, right, the north of Judah, as well as the king of Damascus or Aram. So those two nations, you can see Israel here and then Aram right here, just a little bit to the northeast. Those two kings have offered an alliance with Ahaz of Judah to fight against Assyria. They think that if they build an alliance, they'll be able to fight against them better. Now, Ahaz is undecided about what he wants to do in this situation. But then Ahaz actually learns of a plot between Israel and Aram. So if he doesn't join, if Ahaz does not join their alliance, they are going to depose him and install a puppet king who will then join their alliance with them against Assyria. This is all in Isaiah 7 verses 2 through chapter 7 verses 2 through 6. So what Ahaz does is he considers asking Assyria for aid against these two nations. So he's worried about getting deposed to form an alliance against Assyria. So one option, of course, is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So he considers joining Assyria and having them help him against these other two nations. But Isaiah, the prophet, warns Ahaz against this. What Isaiah tells Ahaz is that he should trust God for protection and he should not join the alliance against Assyria, and he should not also ask Assyria for assistance or for help. And in his pride, Ahaz ignores the word of God to Isaiah, and he requests aid or assistance from Assyria. Isaiah then predicts, as a result of this, that Ahaz will get help from Assyria, in fact, but it will come at a great cost to him. Assyria will overthrow these two kings, the king of Israel and then the king of Aram, that wanted to depose Ahaz. So that will be helpful to Ahaz. But Assyria will also bring a tsunami of destruction to the kingdom of Judah and will lay to waste much of the nation. And if you read Isaiah chapter 8, verses 5 through 8, you can see this. So the destruction visited upon Judah by Assyria is God's judgment on Ahaz and on the nation for rejecting God's protection and seeking out their own means of protection. So after Assyria moves through the land of Judah, the people will look around and they'll look around them and they'll see destruction and desolation, which Isaiah refers to as darkness. So when we get into Isaiah chapter 9, the context of that is Assyria has gone through the land, or they're about to go through the land of Judah, and they will wipe it clean. They will not depose Ahaz, of course, because he sought for help, but they're going to destroy much of the nation still. And so Isaiah, as he's predicting this, he says, you're going to look around and see darkness. But as we move more into chapter 9, right, at the beginning, he says it's going to be darkness, deep darkness all around, but that darkness does not have the last word. Isaiah predicts a time when the people who were under God's judgment, who are the ones who sat in darkness, they would eventually witness the dawn of light. Though they mourned their destruction, God would bring about deliverance for them. So how would God bring about that deliverance? So he's used Assyria to come judge the nation of Judah. They are dwelling in darkness and in destruction that's come from Assyria's invasion. But God predicts that in chapter 9, verses 6 through 7, that is the birth of this child who will bring an end to this darkness and deliver the people not only from the physical judgment from Assyria, but actually from the spiritual judgment as a result of their rejection of God. Zechariah, then, when he picks up on this language, he identifies Jesus as the fulfillment of this child in Isaiah 9, the child who would bring light to those who are in darkness. Now, we also know that those during Zechariah's time were dwelling under Roman rule. And so the land had not been destroyed, of course, but they were also dwelling in darkness in a way in that they were under subjugation by a foreign nation. And so we see a similar pattern play itself out as well from Isaiah's time to the time that Zechariah speaks this. Zechariah specifically says that the people are not just in darkness, but they're also dwelling in the shadow of death. So Jesus would bring salvation to usher people out of God's judgment and into life. But also, Jesus' coming heralds the end of death, right? He would free people from the sentence of death as a result of their sin. So Zechariah then predicts that Jesus will bring salvation and life. It is he who will rule forever, as Isaiah 9 predicts, right? Of the increase of his government and of peace, there will be no end. And so this prediction in Isaiah of this child that would be born that would herald the end of darkness, bring light to the people, bring them out of the shadow of death, Zechariah identifies as Jesus is that child. He will bring the people out of the darkness of sin, but he will also end death once and for all. Now, again, we note that Jesus doesn't bring the end of death yet. He's resurrected and he is the first fruits of the new creation. But we, unless we're alive when he returns, we will all die still. But we know from what we see in the rest of the New Testament that Jesus one day will bring about the end of death so that those who follow Jesus will be resurrected unto life with new bodies, no longer constrained by decay and by death and by sin, and we will live forever righteously. And so that's part of the good news that Jesus brings us, the end of death itself, and he will bring us out of the darkness of sin into the light of life and righteousness.